Today we're going to take a brief look at three of Jersey's smallest and most isolated bays. They're alongside each other, but are very different from each other in nature. Fliquet, a shingle-filled cove. La Coupe, a small sandy beach. And Le Saie, a rock-strewn shore. They are on the northeast corner of Jersey, well off the beaten track, and each is magical in its own way. All have very limited parking and are down narrow country lanes that go nowhere other than the bays themselves. There are absolutely no facilities in any of these coves. No toilets, no cafe, no ice cream stalls or deck chair concessions. Just an isolated shore that gets covered twice each day as the tide comes in. You've got to bring everything you might want and take it back with you when you leave. Fliquet is a small bay just behind St Catherine's Breakwater and is easily overlooked. It's a shingle beach with rocks and reefs all around and is usually covered at high water. The name Fliquet means a place of limpets. Until the 1800s, before the breakwater was built, the area was inhabited by a few families who both fished and farmed. Around 1780, one of 22 defensive towers were built on the foreshore. Commonly known as Martello Towers, though the correct name is Conway's Towers, these were intended to defend against the invasion from the French and were manned by about a dozen troops. Unfortunately, Fliquet's tower was shortened in the 1800s and then repurposed by German forces during the occupation, which explains its current, unattractive and somewhat squat appearance. In the mid-1800s, a Mr. John Richardson began building boats on the foreshore here, assisted by his sons. But when looking out at the myriad of rocks that litter this coastline, it seems like a brave place to set up a boatyard, especially as these were not dinghies but cutters, fast, single-masted sailing ships that weighed many tons. Fliquet is more a cove than a beach, and although one can swim here at most states of the tide, the shingle beach means that this is not an ideal place to sunbathe or play with bucket and spade, but more a place to visit and admire the view. The approach to La Coupe is down a long winding road that ends in a rough car park with capacity for 8 to 10 cars. The lane is about half a mile long, only wide enough for one car, and there are almost no passing places, so if you're no good at reversing, you'd better come on foot or by bike. From the car park, a narrow tarmac track about 100 metres long takes you down to a small sandy cove. Access is manageable with a pushchair, but not with a wheelchair. The beach faces southeast, so gets the sun from early mornings and on throughout the day, and gives uninterrupted views across to the Normandy coast. You can swim at any stage of the tide, although the beach usually gets covered at high water, so check with the tide table before you visit. The sand is fine and golden at the top of the beach, but there are some areas with pebbles lower down. There are rocky reefs to explore at either side of the bay, and enough variety to keep most children entertained in a safe environment while their guardians relax. For the more adventurous, above, on the headland, is a beacon that can easily be reached from a narrow pathway, and the views over the adjoining bays and out across the channel are worth the climb. Obviously, this sort of beach isn't for everyone, but if you want to get away from it all, this is a hidden treasure that hasn't changed in centuries. In the autumn, sloes can be picked from the hedgerows, and in the winter, you'll probably have the place to yourself. Le Saie, on the other hand, is quite another matter. Again, access is down a long winding road that leads to a rough car park with capacity for about 8 cars. If you wander up the headland, you'll find a Neolithic dolmen dating back several thousand years, a 15th century guardhouse, and right on the promontory, the site of an old cannon battery and views across to Roselle Harbour and the French coast. Le Saie Harbour is down a rough track that can get a little muddy and leads to a rocky shingle bay, which means that access is only really suitable for the able-bodied. This is not a beach for buckets and spades, and not a great one for swimming either. When the tide retreats, it leaves behind a lunar-like landscape, ideal for the curious and adventurous to explore, and at high tide, the whole area is underwater. Further down the beach, large sandy areas appear among the reefs. There are pools and rock pools, and if you like seashells, this is one of the best places in the island to find colourful periwinkles. If they're attached to the rock or seaweed, they're alive, so leave them alone. And even the ones that litter the shore should be checked for hermit crabs before being taken. For the foraging types, black winkles grow large here and in abundance, and when cooked offer a free tasty meal if you like that sort of thing. One needs to be careful when clambering over the reefs and rocks because the seaweed that grows here makes things very slippery. And the rocks themselves are geologically interesting, as unlike most of Jersey's coastline, which is largely granite, here Roselle conglomerate can be found. This is made up of sea or river washed stones that were reformed into a coarse concrete-like rock back in prehistory. Le Saie is best visited at low tide, and although not a bay for the average beachgoer, it's perfect for an adventure where children and adults of every age can pass a few hours exploring Jersey's coastal environment. That said, keep an eye on the tide. There are several gullies that fill with water before the main reef is covered, meaning that you can get cut off if you're exploring the most seaward reef. So that sums up Fliquet, the Coupe and Le Saie. They're not for everyone, but if you want more from your beach experience than sunbathing and eating ice cream, why not pay them a visit at any time of the year? They'll take you back to a simpler time and to three of Jersey's hidden treasures. I hope you found this interesting and informative. If so, click the like button. And to see more of our Jersey-related videos, please subscribe. I'm Richard, and this is brought to you by Jersey, a Guide.